It cost $276 billion to run the federal government in 2012, and the province of Nova Scotia has a budget of $9.5 billion. Governments get almost all their money through taxes, which are collected from people and businesses, but mostly from people. Taxes are a bit like homework. Nobody looks forward to doing them, but we're better off as a country when we do. That way, Canada can have nice things. Let's start with the federal government. The feds collect money in a number of different ways, but their favorite way to take our money is through income taxes, a percentage of the salary you earn at your job. Almost half of the money collected by the federal government comes from income tax. The rest of the government's revenue comes from corporate taxes on businesses, sales taxes, and other taxes on fuel and imported goods. Also, in order to support those who can't find work, they collect employment insurance premiums from everyone who is working. Then there's the money earned from crown corporations, businesses that are owned by government, such as Via Rail and Canada Post. When all the money is counted, the federal government is left with almost $250 billion. The feds spend about 2/5 of our money on federal initiatives. The biggest single expense is paying down interest on the national debt. The next biggest expense is paying for national defense, followed by spending in public safety and the Canada Revenue Agency, the organization responsible for collecting taxes. The rest is spent on programs and many other government departments and running the crown corporations. Less than 0.25% is spent on running Parliament, a small price to pay for democracy. Most of the federal government's money is transferred directly to people and the provinces and territories. 1/4 of all government transfer spending finds its way into the hands of people with an immediate need for it, through income and pension support for the elderly, employment insurance benefits for the unemployed, and tax breaks for families with children. So the government helps us make our country a better and fairer place for others. 1/5 of all federal spending goes to the provinces and territories, including Nova Scotia, for healthcare, post-secondary education and children's programs, and support for the provinces and municipalities. The province of Nova Scotia, like the rest of the provinces and territories, has other ways of collecting money too. The transfer money Nova Scotia receives from the feds makes up the biggest single piece of Nova Scotia's budget. The provincial income tax gives us almost just as much money. Sales and fuel taxes make up another 1/5 of our budget, and a small amount comes from the profit of our crown corporations, like the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation and the Halifax-Dartmouth Bridge Commission. The remainder comes from a variety of other taxes and sources. When it comes to government spending in Nova Scotia, the story is pretty simple. The biggest expense for Nova Scotia is healthcare. Next in line is education, which accounts for almost half as much as health when you include spending in primary and secondary education, plus universities and colleges. Community services, which includes child protection and social assistance, is the next biggest. Then comes the interest costs on the provincial debt. Almost 10% of our budget is spent on paying down the interest for things we already bought. The remainder of provincial spending is spread across other provincial departments, most of which take less than 2% of the provincial budget to run. When it comes to the costs of specific things, here are some facts that can help put these figures into context. The cost of delivering a baby in a Canadian hospital is at least $2,700, and more if there are any complications. If you complete high school and university, the government will have subsidized your education costs by $177,000. On the other hand, if you end up in prison instead of school, it will cost our government $102,000 per year to keep you there, more than double what the average Canadian will earn during the same amount of time. On a larger scale, Canada's participation in the war in Afghanistan has been estimated at over $22 billion, more than double the annual budget of a province the size of Nova Scotia. In order for the government to be able to spend money on all of these items, provincial and federal budgets must be approved by the appropriate legislature, just like every other piece of legislation. Our elected representatives in the legislatures can choose to increase spending in one area, reduce it in another, collect more or less money in taxes, or borrow money on behalf of their citizens. And since it is ultimately our money that is being spent, this is something we really need to keep in mind when voting for our representatives. Got more questions? Ask us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out our previous videos.